everyone, I'm Silvia.
Hi, this is Aria.
Hi, I'm Francesca.
Hi, I'm Tomato.
Hi, I'm Noel.
And we are Clusterduck. Clusterduck is a collective working at the intersection of research, design and transmedia, focusing on the processes and actors behind the creation of internet-related content. In our research, we focused on the subcultural landscape of social media and mostly into internet memes.
We are 5 people working and talking every day online, but we relate with around 40 collaborators around the world, mainly from Europe. Jules Duran, who is represented here as well, is one of our collaborators and will join us during the making of the project we are presenting here.
Manifesto.
In its final form, it will be a book.
But it will also be much more than a book.
What you see here in these pictures is a documentation of the first iteration of Manifesto, which was presented at the Wrong Digital Biennale here in Berlin in 2017. The new iteration we are working on now will be much more than a book, as we are going to show you now.
Our interest in memes resulted in the production of several different projects. Today, before presenting Manifesto in further detail, we would like to shortly introduce 2 of the largest and most relevant. The first one is called Meme Propaganda and took place in 2018, and the second one is still ongoing and is called Memers for Future. For many of us, our private interest in memes started long time ago, as you will see later, but it became a public issue in 2016 with all the buzzing around the presidential campaign Hillary versus Trump, with some memes entering the mainstream media in a pretty relevant position. We did realize that memes were a magic tool. But not only, we did realize that memes could be exploited by advertising and propaganda. Okay, maybe we knew that already. So yes, to go deeper, we did realize that memes and the buzzing around them could be interpreted in many ways, and it could be in fact biased, and also the history of meme communities was at risk of being rewritten by the alt-right in this case. Let's see an example of what I'm saying. During 2016, there was a narrative circulating among mainstream media which was going more or less like this.
A group of trolls from 4chan created a state called Kakistan and a magic cult to support their fascist ideologies through memes. Trump didn't lose the opportunity to get publicity for this campaign by jumping on the alt-right bandwagon, which is actually very funny to remember now, right after Mr. Bannon, leader of Breitbart News, which he described in 2016 as the platform for the alt-right, has just been arrested for fraud.
Hillary Clinton, at this point, declared Pepe the Frog a symbol of hate, to be compared to a swastika.
While Trump won the elections, also thanks, the common narrative says, to the alt-right groups coming from 4chan.
We found this narrative completely inaccurate on both sides. This story does not take into account, in fact, that Christopher Paul, founder of 4chan, realized about the presence of the alt-right on his platform way before many and banned them so that they had to move to less moderated platforms like Gab or 8chan. Also does not take into account that 4chan was a platform where movements like anonymous and anti-fascist initiatives were started as well. And especially, it does not take into account that Pepe is not only a hate symbol,
to be compared to a swastika,
but a meme character that still belongs to anyone who wants to use it, because as the so-called Streisand effects tell us,
try to hide, remove or censor something from the internet will just provoke the opposite effect of publicizing the information even more.
So what we learn from this story is that memes are often controversial and contradictory, exactly like Vishnu, and that if you want to really know them, you will have to analyze pretty well the context in which they were born, and if you want to use them for your propaganda, you better be good at it. Moreover, we have to take into account that Pepe is just one of the many meme characters that never cease to amaze us with many different narratives. These reaction characters like Wojak, Spurdo, Sparde, Gondola, Gritti, to name some, are created over time by a dense network of contributions, like a very complex version of an emoji, and this is why we like to see them as powerful creatures, maybe even totems. This first part showed how influential Pepe the Frog in his alt-right version could be in the past years. So strong that around 2016 you could find anywhere a meme that was stating "the left can't meme." We don't know if talking about left or right has the same sense anymore in this post-everything era, but what we felt at the time, like many other meme lovers, was that there was a need for an anti-version of Pepe, something as strong and powerful but connected to a more inclusive and maybe wholesome message.
It was with the aim of reclaiming our beloved meme characters and creating new narratives that we started the online exhibition and interactive operation
Meme Propaganda.
So we made a call, asking designers, meme lord, artists to redesign new propaganda posters based on old propaganda posters of any sort and kind. Then we made those posters freely downloadable and usable online with the sole request of documenting their usage and send us the pictures. Those posters were used in many cities during many demos. Here, for instance, you can see
Paris, Rome, St. Petersburg, Moscow, Rotterdam, London, Madrid, Berlin.
Just to name some.
all pictured between the end of April and the beginning of May of 2018. Through this project, we also started to investigate memes as peculiar artifacts of internet cultures, atypical forms of expression inset in a common narrative background, particularly focusing on memes as totemic figures capable of acting both offline and online thanks to the role that they play in the imaginary of the online communities they inhabit. We observed that each of the characters was playing both its own storytelling and as a side role character in other characters' tales, in a narrative determined both by the spread and success of each meme
And characterized by endless branches and evolutions thanks to their dialogic nature.
For instance, we met this guy, Peter Bear.
But who is Peter Bear?
For those who don't know him, Peter Bear was born on a Japanese BBS or bulletin board system. At the beginning it was just called
Kuma.
as the Japanese for bear.
And was not characterized by any sexual behavior.
But later on he went through some transformation, and especially on 4chan he started being
Superimposed
to child images to signal,
ambiguous content.
so he soon became associated with pedophilia in general. And an unexpected twist in the evolution of these weird families of bear happens with
Gondola.
He was also born on a Finnish image board thanks to an Italian user called
Scary Pizza.
He's a bear with no arms and very long legs, always depicted while walking or exploring beautiful places. He also happened to be our first totemic character in the travel of meme propaganda, as his curious yet participant outlook was quite fitting our attitude toward our first project with memes. And another Virgil guiding us in our online travel has been another character emerged from the memosphere more or less at the same time, this time from the left and being really angry. For a set of reasons, Gritti was immediately identified as the anti-PP that the internet left movement had been waiting for so long. Compared to Gondola, is much more politicized and also openly violent. This makes him much more similar to PP, in the sense that he's more edgy. So we felt this was a good conclusion for this part of the journey, in the sense that the circle is now closed.
So in 2020, meme propaganda evolved into a new project we called Memers for Future. Again, we asked our networks to help us, this time collecting and sharing images of memes created and used at climate justice demonstrations. Basically, it's like a more specific case study of the use of memes on a certain political theme. While meme propaganda was more a broader study at the use of memes in politics, in this case we concentrated on a specific topic. This could have been probably done also for other cases. For example, Hong Kong would have been an interesting study case. There has been widespread use of memes in the Hong Kong demonstrations. Or, for example, the use of memes in the LGBTQA movement. But we thought we would concentrate on the climate justice movement, as we think this is one of the most urgent matters we are facing at the moment.
And these are just some of the pictures we received. What's interesting to us is the feedback mechanism between the IRL reality and the so-called
real world,
which becomes so intertwined to be badly distinguishable.
So we can observe memes created for demos and other public events in the real world, shared online through social media channels such as Instagram channels, and then reshared and remixed in the physical world.
And in the last months we observed a further evolution of these as the corona outbreak and the security measure taken more or less everywhere to face it moved protests and people
from offline to online.
We are seeing how movements are adapting to this new situation and are, for example, using the classic cardboard format that previously was used at demonstrations on social media, for example on Instagram stories or on TikTok.
We started to notice that not only memes were used to protest sign, as it happens with Dogo, so we decided to enter in this
Feedback loop.
inspired mostly by the Friday for Future movement. We started to draw illustration. Basically, we observed which were the most popular format and drew them in our own style. And since the movement has now moved completely into the digital dimension due to the coronavirus outbreak, we decided to share them and make them freely accessible to anyone who wanted to use it. We called 6 different artists from different geographical locations and from different online bubbles. Here you see the first two. On the left, Angelica Liv, coming from Colombia, and on the right, Carlos Cotto, who is based in Australia. These two are from people we already worked with during meme propaganda. They are Dr. Pira on the left, who is a famous underground comic illustrator from Italy, and Jules Durand on the right, who is a French designer and type nerd, as well as a member of Clusterduck himself. And these are Shai Arieli on the left, who is also part of the Clusterduck, a Berlin-based Israeli designer and tattoo artist, and on the right, Ton Bin Swan, who is an illustrator based in Singapore. And here you can see a screen recording of the website when you can go and have a look of the poster in our nice cube map and read more about the concept. Also, part of the website is the super internet space where we invited people to draw, to create memes or illustration to raise social awareness about climate change. And this project was presented at the Publica at the beginning of this year.
Another interesting thing that we noticed while studying climate justice memes is that while we have classic meme formats, like for example the doggo that you see here, or also the Drake format, so all the formats, for example, that imply an alternative between a good choice, an obvious choice, a right choice, and a completely stupid choice are very popular in the climate justice movement for obvious reasons. But what we also noticed is that there were also specific formats that were actually developed within the movements, and not necessarily in the digital world, but actually at the demonstrations. So you would have, for example, this was one format that was very popular, so it's getting hotter than my imaginary boyfriend, or variations on this topic. And this is actually a meme that developed at the demonstration. So this is not something that developed on some image board, but someone drew it on a cardboard, and then it was documented and put on Instagram, and other people saw it, and so it started to spread around the world. And this, for us, is a very peculiar and interesting phenomena that shows how the climate justice movement became, on its own right, some kind of mimetic ecosystem. Just like image boards on 4chan or Reddit, the climate justice movement is working a little bit in the same way. So you have new formats that are being developed and that spread through these different channels. And the interesting thing here is that you actually see in real time how deeply connected the so-called digital and real world are. And so this, of course, brings up the questions regarding how meaningful it is to uphold this distinction. In our view, it is not.
The feedback loop between IRL and URL communities has always been a crucial node for us at Clusterduck. Starting from our individual studies in art, communication, design, social sciences and philosophy, and going through all our collective research. We feel that the concept of
fluctuant identities
proposed by Antonio Caronia kind of well fits our needs in this research, as it describes quite well how the different layers, realities and identities of each one of us recollects in its own experience, desires, feelings and perspective.
So basically, when we found out this, when we understood this, what we wanted to do is to kind of enter this feedback loop. And the way we did this is by identifying some of the most popular, let's call them memes or formats that were used in the climate justice movement, and create our own interpretations of them. So we created illustrations to represent a certain format, and then we gave them to the movement. So we put them online and they're freely available for everyone who wants to download them and use them and change them. And this is how we wanted to enter this loop between the digital world and the real world in the movement. So now we finally come to our final and current project, which is called
Manifesto,
as we said in the introduction. And we started to implement the project over the past months during our residency at IMPAKT, which was enabled and supported by the EMAP EMARE residency exchange program. And now we are going to show you some of the results of this residency. So as you may have noticed, our work is based on a simple but powerful assumption. Memes are a technology capable of changing the reality that surrounds us. Now, what do we mean by this? We actually mean a lot of things, but first and foremost we want to suggest that memes should be viewed as a linguistic, that is a semantic technology. And just like language, they're used to describe and interact with the reality in which we are socially embedded. So you could also say memes are technology, but memes are language as well. And of course one could also concentrate on the social aspect of memes, so on the concept of memes as a subculture. As we all know, they definitely were the cornerstone on which many important digital communities that emerged over the past years have been built.
Manifesto will be an illustrated book about internet memes and a web-based project that will explore the occult meaning and communicative potential of memetic symbologies. The book wants to describe the personal experience of someone who's approaching the meme culture, starting from the top of the iceberg with
page comics and normie memes, and diving deeper into the mainstream memes, the Instagram waves, and deeper and deeper into the surreal and fried and
whatever the you want to see in the iceberg. The book was originally created for the Wrong Digital Biennale, and it was a project created by us and made by Jules Durand. The original idea was taking into a digital safari where the user explores a unknown dimension of the web.
With Clusterduck, we decided to continue this project, to give the manifesto all the necessary means to be written in an inclusive and collective way, while adding to the first beta version of the book our meme archive and an extensive report about our research on meme, language and propaganda.
We did so by building an interactive exhibition website called Manifesto.space and a series of detective world tables. Freely inspired by the Tree of Life, we identified 10 levels of mimetic depth, which can be related to 10 recurrent topics in our mimetic research. We want to be as inclusive as possible to all web communities that contributed to enrich the history of this new language and technology that we call memes. That is why Manifesto.space is linked to a system of 10 Telegram research chats and bridge bots made for everyone to contribute with meme selections, links or papers about the research topics of each layer. This system will allow Manifesto.space to exist on the web as a forever updating archive accessible to all interested users. Manifesto.space landing page is inspired by the descending path of memes such as iceberg tears parodies or galaxy brain, allowing the user to be led through ever deeper levels of memetics from the most popular formats
to the most occult.
The Esoteric Approach will follow it by choosing the Kabbalistic Tree of Life as a symbol and a structure for our project. Also follows another important framework that impacted our visual and theoretical research, as we feel that there are several analogies among internet cultures and the historical cultures that included occult disciplines in their social organization and diffusion of knowledge. We can see that in the presence of multiple layers of sense, both in the artistic and literary production, but also in the way they are organized as communities, as Erika Lagalis illustrated well in her recent anarcho-occultism book.
As the first 5 levels of depths are largely exposed already, the user can travel through a selected history of range comics and lolcats to the golden age impact memes and proceed through relatable memes, reaching hyperstitional and political memes to arrive at stereotypical or identity politics memes. In the course of the next months, we will go even deeper with the Instagram wave original content memes, then meta memes, esoteric and conspiracy memes, surreal memes, and finally, for now, fright memes. As Pepe Silva would say, everything is connected. And this is why also the 10 levels of deepness that we just visited are strongly connected to 10 recurrent topics in our research. The topics are explorable by looking at hints and findings on the 10 detective world tables. The first 5 of them are already available for consultation on the web. The first one, Memes as Collective Rituals, is exploring the age of raids, trolls and anonymous movement, where memes were used as a weapon to flood mail threads, forums and websites. The second one, Memes and the Mainstreams, sees the entry of memes into mainstream culture, the first episodes of meme as marketing tools, and the relationship between mainstream and subcultures. The third one, What makes memes relatable, is a meticulous selection of relatable memes coming from our Telegram group Just Fresh Down Meme, and it is made with the aim of questioning the meme lexicon as like what it is to be a normie or what it means to be edgy or wholesome. The fourth one, Memes between Technique and Magic, fully analyze the relationship between meme magic and memes as hyperstitional technologies from the cult of Helix through the hyperstitional compasses. The fifth one, Memes and Identity Politics, dive into the issues such as self-representation, the frequent stereotyping of political and gender identities made by memes, and the turn amount of this practice also made by memes. This year we will go further into the other 5 topics, of which we can just give you a sneak preview. Anyone who's interested is of course invited to participate in the making.
The detective wall is not only a digital work, as every table has also an analogic version. We already mounted some of them and presented them at a small public event at Haus der Statistik here in Berlin. So this documentation that you can see here is actually, these are pictures from a small event we had a few months ago where we presented the first tables when they were finished. These panels, as you may have guessed already, they have 2 main references. One obvious inspiration comes from the famous Pepe Silvia meme that you have already seen throughout the presentation, sometimes also known as the conspiracy theory guy. And another important inspiration comes from Abi Warburg's famous Bilderatlas Mnemosyne. So the same way Warburg used his concept of the pathos formula to develop an original approach to art history that still resounds today, we are also trying to identify underlying patterns and codes of memetic production, many of which actually transcend the world of memes themselves. The results from this research are being hanged on a series of panels and connected by red threads, leading the viewer through an interactive discovery of meme culture. So the viewer somehow becomes, puts himself into the role of the investigator and tries to unconnect all these connections between the different symbolic universes that we are trying to show in the panels. And if COVID allows us, we are planning to present the finished project at IMPAKT later this year, and we hope to bring it on tour to different locations over the coming months.
Another part of the project is going to be a poster and a fanzine. Ideally, we want to create 10 posters and 10 fanzine for every layers of the iceberg and every table of content, but this is a process that is in the making. And we decided all together through a process of collaborative design, the palette, the fonts and the guideline of the project, because we are working, we are like several designers, part of the Clusterduck, so we are working all together on this thing. And yeah, part of our process as a collective is collaborative design.
And the documentation process is also a very, very important part of this project, both under a dissemination point of view that we always keep in mind when we produce our research, and under a transmedia and cross-media point of view that is also really relevant and important in our production. As we usually do, we documented the process both through social networks and more traditional kind of supports, to give an idea of the work behind every output we produce and testify the cross-media research method we adopt. And we feel almost impossible at this point not to mention the reflection, research and inquiry that we had upon Meme Manifesto as a 21st century art book. A transmedia, participated and of course interactive media book that aims at reflecting the elusiveness of modern times and modern artistic production. A book exploring nowadays possibilities in terms of networking, art production and cross-media research, made both by RL and URL events and cooperation that reconnects with the tradition of art books through its design and conceptual effort. A book made of multiple outputs and shared through various platforms and of course on different media, all interconnected thanks to the use of QR code and other URL, IRL links.
A book will also be the final goal of this transmedia collective research, as we are planning to gather all the archived memes and all the participative research in a 10-chapter illustrated book. A Meme Manifesto. So, as a follow-up, join the Telegram research chat if you want to contribute to the research or to the archive, or alternatively,
just write an email to clusterduck@mememanifesto.space.
Thank you for the invitation. Ciao.
Bye bye.
Bye!
Bye!